Welcome to our channel. Enjoy the video.
February 19, 1994. Inside Riverside General Hospital in California, the emergency room was preparing for another critical patient. Her name was Gloria Ramirez. She was only 31 years old. But Gloria was extremely sick. She had advanced cervical cancer, and that night, her condition had become dangerously unstable. Her heart was racing. Her blood pressure was falling. And she was struggling desperately to breathe. Doctors and nurses immediately surrounded her. They administered medications. They connected her to monitors. They began trying to stabilize her. At first, nothing about the situation seemed impossible. It was a medical emergency. Terrifying. But familiar. Then Gloria's condition suddenly worsened. As the medical team worked, some staff members noticed something unusual about her appearance. Her skin appeared unusually oily. And there was a strange odor coming from her body. But the real mystery began when a nurse drew blood from Gloria's arm. Something about the blood looked wrong. Witnesses later reported seeing unusual particles inside the syringe, described as crystalline or manila-colored material. And then came another disturbing detail. A strange smell. Some staff members reportedly described it as chemical-like, while others compared it to a fruity or garlic-like odor. The nurse examining the blood suddenly became dizzy. Then she collapsed. At first, the other medical workers didn't know what was happening. But within minutes, another member of the staff began feeling sick. Then another. The people who had entered the room to save Gloria Ramirez were now becoming mysteriously ill themselves. And nobody knew why. Was Gloria carrying something dangerous inside her body? Was something in her blood poisoning the people around her? Or was there another explanation? Because whatever was happening inside that emergency room was about to turn an ordinary medical emergency into one of the strangest mysteries in American medical history. And the next person to collapse would make the situation even more terrifying. The emergency room was supposed to be the safest place in the building. Doctors were everywhere. Nurses were trained to respond to emergencies. Machines were monitoring every heartbeat. But that night, the danger wasn't coming from outside. It appeared to be coming from the patient lying on the table. After the nurse examining Gloria Ramirez's blood collapsed, the medical team began noticing something disturbing. More people were becoming sick. Some complained of dizziness. Others felt nauseous. Several reported burning sensations. And then, one after another, they began collapsing. A medical resident named Julie Gorchinsky was among those affected. She became seriously ill and eventually lost consciousness. Another staff member, respiratory therapist Maureen Welch, also collapsed. The emergency department was turning into chaos. Doctors who had entered the room to treat Gloria were suddenly being treated themselves. Staff members began leaving the area. Some were carried away. Others were rushed outside. And soon, hospital officials were faced with an extraordinary decision. The emergency room had to be evacuated. Think about that for a moment. A hospital emergency department, filled with doctors and nurses, had become so mysterious and dangerous that the people inside were forced to abandon it. And at the center of everything was Gloria Ramirez, still lying on the table, still critically ill, still surrounded by unanswered questions. But despite every attempt to save her, Gloria's condition continued to deteriorate. At approximately 8:50 p.m., she died. She was only 31 years old. Her death was attributed to complications from advanced cervical cancer. But that didn't explain what had happened to the hospital staff. Why had so many people suddenly become ill? Why did Gloria's blood reportedly contain strange crystalline material? And why had her body produced such an unusual odor? The hospital was now facing a mystery. And the more investigators looked at the evidence, the stranger the case became. Because Gloria's death may have been explained, but the bizarre reaction inside that emergency room wasn't. And then investigators discovered something that would lead them toward a controversial chemical theory. By now, one question dominated the investigation. What had happened inside Gloria Ramirez's body? The hospital staff had reported strange symptoms. Some had collapsed. Others experienced dizziness, nausea, breathing difficulties, or burning sensations. And then there was the blood. Something unusual had apparently been visible inside the syringe. Investigators needed an explanation. Was Gloria exposed to a toxic chemical? Had a medication reacted with something inside her body? Or was the entire incident the result of something far more complicated? One possibility began attracting serious attention. A chemical called dimethyl sulfoxide, better known as DMSO. DMSO is a solvent that has also been used in certain medical contexts. According to one scientific hypothesis, Gloria may have been using DMSO in some form to deal with the severe pain associated with her illness. The theory proposed that, under the right conditions, DMSO could potentially undergo chemical changes inside the body. And this is where the story becomes extraordinary. Researchers associated with Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory proposed a possible chain of chemical reactions. The idea was that DMSO could be converted into other compounds, potentially producing substances that might account for some of the unusual observations reported that night. One proposed mechanism involved the formation of dimethyl sulfone, which could appear in crystalline form. Another step in the theory involved the possible formation of dimethyl sulfate, a highly toxic compound. If such a reaction had actually occurred, it could potentially explain why medical workers exposed to Gloria's bodily fluids or vapors became sick. Suddenly, the strange crystals, the unusual odor, and the symptoms experienced by hospital workers seemed to fit together. But there was a major problem. There was no definitive proof that this entire chemical sequence had actually happened inside Gloria's body. The theory was scientifically interesting. It offered a possible explanation. But it wasn't the same thing as solving the case. Other researchers questioned parts of the explanation. And some experts considered alternative possibilities, including mass psychogenic illness. The evidence was confusing. The witnesses were frightened. And the most important person in the entire case was already dead. Gloria could never tell investigators what she had taken. She could never explain what she had felt. And she could never confirm what had happened inside her body. So the mystery remains suspended between medicine, chemistry, and uncertainty. But one thing was certain. That night, a 31-year-old cancer patient entered an emergency room. Within minutes, multiple medical workers became mysteriously ill. And decades later, the world would still remember Gloria Ramirez by a chilling nickname: the Toxic Lady. But was Gloria really carrying something toxic inside her? Or had the truth been misunderstood from the very beginning? The emergency room had been evacuated. Gloria Ramirez was dead. And now investigators were left with a mystery that seemed almost impossible to explain. Why had so many medical workers suddenly become sick? One possibility was a dangerous chemical reaction. Another was mass psychogenic illness. But neither explanation answered every question. The strange blood sample remained one of the most disturbing pieces of evidence. Witnesses had described unusual particles inside the syringe. Some medical workers had reported a strange odor. And several people had experienced severe physical symptoms. Yet there was no single piece of evidence that could definitively connect every detail. The chemical theory involving DMSO remained one of the most discussed explanations. But it was still a theory. And that distinction matters. Because when investigators tried to reconstruct exactly what had happened inside Gloria's body, there were too many unknowns. What medications had she taken? What substances were actually present in her bloodstream? Could the reported chemical reactions have occurred under the conditions inside her body? And could those reactions really have produced the effects experienced by the hospital staff? There were no easy answers. And perhaps the most frustrating part of the mystery was that the evidence could never be examined in the same way again. The original event was over. The people who witnessed it could describe what they experienced. But they couldn't recreate the exact circumstances. And Gloria herself could never provide an explanation. She had entered that hospital desperately ill. She expected doctors to save her. Instead, her final moments became the center of a medical mystery that would fascinate investigators for decades. Today, the most accepted explanation remains a chemical hypothesis. But it has never completely erased the questions surrounding that night. Because sometimes, the hardest mysteries aren't the ones with no evidence. They're the ones where the evidence seems to tell several different stories at once. And Gloria Ramirez's story still leaves us with one haunting question. What exactly happened to the woman whose blood appeared to make an entire emergency room sick? The answer may lie somewhere between chemistry, medicine, and a mystery that began the moment her blood entered a syringe.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss our next video. See you in the next one.